Welcome back to the Bravo Movie Reviews. Today we are going to look over the Andy Warhol Diaries. It's a new series on Netflix. I watched all 6 parts. Probably going to take you over 7 hours to watch all 6. And I'm right off the get-go here, right off the bat, I'm going to be very, very kind to my hard-working brothers out there who don't have time for this kind of bullshit and nonsense. Here is my opening line. The bottom line is this. If you are into art, this series is a must-watch for you. But if you are a normal Joe Blow who goes to work every day and could care less about art, well, you can skip this series and save your time for, like a stupid reality TV show or whatever. Okay, I'm glad we got that out of the way. Now all the pipe fitters and construction workers of America can go jack off to Kim Kardashian. Why am I doing this review? Why is Bravo von Mueller doing a review on Andy Warhol's diaries? Why is Warhol interesting to me? Well, it's simple. He comes from the Pittsburgh, Ohio River area, and that's where I grew up, on the Ohio River, on the Ohio side. It's a little south of Steubenville. That area is a very conservative, industrial area. It's like a museum of culture, hardworking culture. We got the steel mill workers. My dad was a coal miner. They were not really into art. So Andy moved to New York. He got away from it, but that's where he grew up. He grew up in that industrial town, and then he got up there to uptown New York, and that changed his life. But it's all interesting to me because how he made it work. He had the work ethic of Pittsburgh, and he made it work in the art industry. And trust me, that's not easy. Most artists die broke. Even the good artists, they die with no money. Then after they die, some New York banker comes in, buys up the whole collection, and gets rich off his artwork. But the artist is normally dead, and some New York banker gets rich on everything. Okay, I do love how they put images of his red couch into this series. The red couch is from his movie days in the 1960s. He made underground movies, and I wish they would have. That's one thing, one critique I could put on this series. I wish they would have gone into his 1960s factory years a little bit more, but I understand why they couldn't. And the clue is in the title, the Andy Warhol Diaries. See, we don't know if he was making a diary back in the 1960s. This series is based on a diary that he started later in the years after the 1960s. I don't know exactly when the diary started, but he would actually, he didn't actually write the diaries himself. He would call some girl on the phone, and he would tell her on the phone what he did, and she would write them down, and then every week or two she would bring over to him, and he would read what she wrote. But it was a weird way of writing these diaries. But again, I wish they would have covered more of his 1960s factory years. But then again, I realized the reason is simple. Andy was not doing the diary thing back then that we know of. Maybe in the future, a 1960s Andy Warhol diary will pop up, and that would be a new book and a new series. But don't hold your breath. All right, I want to take a break from the review of this series, and I'm going to go into something kind of weird and different. The last part of this series, I think it's number 6, they go on, they talk about Andy catching the flu from some Italian lady, and here's some of my thoughts on that. It's kind of weird, and it's not really part of the review, but here, I'm going to add it in here. Let's talk Italian attitude for just a moment here. We're talking old school Italian attitude. Because me personally, just having lived through 2 years of snowflakes, wearing masks from 2020 to 2022, all these people scared to death, and everybody's wearing a mask. And after living through this for 2 years, I thought this was so funny, listening to this lady. This is an old school Italian lady. She's talking about flu viruses, and I thought it was so funny. I'll show you a clip of her statement in a moment. Yeah, she epitomizes the Italian attitude. And anyhow, so I'm watching this new Andy Warhol series on Netflix. And in the last episode, the sixth one, the last episode, there's this Italian lady. Here she is. Her name is Danella Morera. Anyhow, she was one of Warhol's good friends. And again, she epitomizes the Italian attitude when it comes to these flu viruses. And so in 1987, Andy Warhol took his last trip over to Europe. He went to Italy on the Concorde, went over to Europe on the Concorde, made it to Italy. And he met Danella there. She was with him. He was going to have a big exhibition. They did the parties, they did the dinners and everything. So what you got to understand is Andy's gallbladder is acting up and he's in pain and he's not feeling well. And like I said, he met his friend here. Danella's his friend, and she's going to help him there while he's in Italy. But Andy's kind of paranoid, and he says, she's coughing on my food. And this is all in his diaries. And I've been resisting her flu for 2 days straight. And he's telling, this again, it's the Andy Warhol diaries. And she's talking into my face, and he's worried about getting the flu. Okay? And finally, he breaks down, and he gave in, he says, and he got the flu. But they made a big deal about this apparently, and it got back to Danella, and here's her response to her giving Andy the flu. It's I swear it's kind of funny, and I think it epitomizes the Italian attitude. What do you think?
Perhaps I I did like it. That's it. And they made such a big story. I mean, I didn't get sick. I didn't go to bed. As a matter of fact, a few days later, I took the plane and I went to New York.
Hey, what are you talking about? I didn't give nobody the flu. The crazy Americanas. Crazy Americana. Who am I? I'm Danella. I don't give nobody the flu. Okay. Oh, right. The twins. Twins seem to be special. And Andy Warhol loved to be around special people. So the two big loves in Andy's life that are featured in this series, they both had twins. So I think this is John Gould here. Yeah, John Gould actually worked for Paramount Pictures. I'm not sure. I guess that's him on the left, I think. I'm not really sure. He had a twin. And then before John Gould, there was this Johnson kid. I forget his first name, Johnson. And he had a twin. So anyhow, there seems to be, with Andy Warhol and his love life in this series, it's all about twins. You know, Andy, interesting take on repetition. So in this series, there's this one lady who actually says that Andy was like a puppeteer. He could get people to do things for him. And, well, he was like a photographer. He had to take a lot of photographs of people. And photographers are known to get people to do things they may not want to do. Another quote by a lady in the series, her name was Donna DeSalvo. Donna DeSalvo. She says something interesting. I'll try to quote her here the best I can. She says this about Andy. There's still this desire to see surface, a certain simplicity. And I just think that Warhol was so good at hiding so many parts of his life, but you'll never figure him out. You can make 1,000,000 movies, you can write 1,000,000 books, but I don't think you'll ever figure Warhol out, and I hope no one ever does. That's what Donna DeSalvo said about Andy, and I kind of agree with her on that one. I wanted to add that quote. And I think I can add a little bit there, knowing where Andy Warhol grew up, again, on the Ohio River, and I know all the conservative people there. I think he did pretty well hiding his conservative secrets. I believe he had a conservative side to him, and he hid it well. Again, Andy Warhol worked hard to be successful in the art business. He did more, but he did more than that. He became an icon. He became a legend, and I think partly because of where he came from. His conservative attitude from Pittsburgh, which again he was able to hide it very, very well. He is an enigma. He really is. It's hard to understand. I don't think anybody will truly understand him because he hid it so well. Okay, I'll try to wrap this up a little quickly here. the series does a good job on showing how Andy was perfect for the MTV generation, the 15 minutes of fame for everybody. And that was Andy Warhol had his own little show on MTV. And the series also certainly describes well the fear of AIDS and HIV back then. I mean, everybody was afraid of AIDS. That's the thing with Andy was into this commercial art and Campbell's soup and the mainstream. And that's how the fear of AIDS got perpetrated through mainstream media. And it's also one thing I should have said earlier. It's fascinating how the show also claims that Andy learned at a very young age, about 10 years old, how he could win people over as friends by doing portraits of them. For drawing them, he could do portraits of them, and he could win people over. He learned that at an early age, back on the Ohio River. Okay, so in closing, what I thought was surreal was a birthday party that Andy Warhol went to for the young Sean Lennon, John Lennon's son, Sean. It was a birthday party. And guess who was at that birthday party? It's sort of surreal. Steve Jobs personally was there setting up an Apple computer for Sean Lennon at his birthday party. And of course, Andy Warhol was there. It was surreal. And I thought that was a very interesting part of the series. I missed so much. I mean, there's so much to talk about. It's over 7 hours of footage. And the series tells you also about how Andy and another famous artist, Jean-Michel, created over 200 paintings together in a 2-year period. Very interesting friendship that produced so much. I mean, if you're into art, like I said, this is a must-see series. And I liked it. Like I said, if you're into art, I'll give this series a 7 out of 10. And there's Keith Haring. And he definitely had a whole lot of friends in New York. A lot of people knew Andy Warhol. New York is a town for art. And interesting series. That's all I have for you.